from Region 4, Mindy Ross and Pete Wislip, and Lee Wisdom, who's running against Diane Hauser, who declined to be here. I originally helped organize this 2 years ago, and it went really well. And it was all for a graduation project to help inform voters and get the youth into politics and engaged. Especially in downtown, this is very, very important, since some of our elections have come down to just 2 votes. And what better way to get youth involved than a school board who directly affects us? They determine the quality of our education, how we learn, and in general, just our curriculum in general, as well as much more. On your way out, we have our QR codes around the building set up on the posts. You can submit questions via Google form there, just scan it. As well as here for voter registration. I encourage anybody that will be 18 by November 6th to register to vote, since you will be eligible for the election. The deadline is October 20th. It only takes a few minutes. It's very easy, and it will allow you to have a voice in the upcoming election. Yeah, if you're not, that's totally fine. As long as you're 6 months, as long as you're turning 18 within 6 months before the next election, you'll be eligible to vote. Like I said, it only takes a few minutes, and make sure to do it before you go to college. It is much harder to register to vote when you get to college, especially if you go out of state. So now before we get started, I want to hand the mic, figuratively, off to Alyssa, who's helped and generously given her organization's time and effort to setting up the live stream for this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Photography, videography, we're actually making a documentary right now. Part 1 is out on YouTube, it's called Invisible No More. But I'm really excited for this event, and I know that the kids I brought with me are too. I hope you guys have a great time.
integrated into all parts of their world. We talked about 6, 7, you know, and I am not above coming to your level, but I need you to reach mine as well. And it becomes like an understanding and a conversation. And I like to call it a child's personal best. Because as you mentioned, you know, the many offerings and the different types of learning and to giving a child what they need to learn, not what I'm comfortable grading or what I need to have. So I think if you really open up a child's world and show them the many ways that they can learn using all of their senses, all the things on our, you know, that we have available to us, that they will find their personal best and they'll feel great about themselves. And you have to open up the conversation of what are you going to be when you grow up. Any grade I teach, we have that conversation. And this year it's 6th grade. I don't know, Mrs. Miller. And I said, yeah, we're going to keep talking about it. All right, thank you.
So I was also a teacher, I'm also a parent, and I feel like when I'm thinking about strategies that are going to help students to reach their full potential, I think about, you know, what's actually going to be happening in the classroom, small group instruction, taking time to work on all of those different modalities that a student's going to work with. We have reading specialists in the building. We also have higher level learning. So we don't want to just support our lower level learners. We want to be sure we're supporting everyone. It's really important for our teachers to have high expectations of their students, and we encourage that. And I think that the encore subjects are also just as important as some of the academics in making sure that our students are able to reach their highest potential. I think that those encore subjects allow them to have that freedom, a little bit of time to relax and to, you know, tap into their creativity and their things that they might be good at outside of just academics. And that tends to make people more willing to focus on those strategies that they're learning in the classroom.
Hi, I'm also a teacher and a parent, and I'm going to echo a lot of what was already said. As a teacher, I teach English, and I really try to get to know my students at the beginning of the year as well. We do a lot of, you know, collaborative work in my classroom. I get to know them as graders, and I think that it's really important for teachers to have a rapport with students so they can best learn their interests and their learning styles. I also believe that social emotional learning is really critical for students to, you know, learn how to interact with their peers, to be respectful of authority figures. I think in the upper levels, you know, and starting probably in middle school, kids should start thinking about, you know, career tracks, what interests them, what their strengths are. So we should have, you know, job fairs. We should have people come in from the community and talk about their work. I've seen that really be effective with my students. You know, they can envision what it's like to be in technology and, you know, what the day-to-day demands are of that career. So I think it's really important that kids have a variety of experiences and that we really support them. Developing clubs, having leadership skills like Jacob with his graduation project. I think these are things that really foster a strong sense of self and build up their self-esteem. Thanks.
Well, at the district, we do something called screening. So every teacher is screening their students throughout the year, multiple times during the year. And it's not just academic screening, which is very important because we make sure that every student is properly placed, properly challenged, and keep up with that. Are they still being challenged? Are they struggling in this area? But there's also behavioral screening, which is really important. Just as important, I think, as academic screening, because we all know that students learn best when their well-being is taken care of, when they are not stressed, when they are feeling well, they are able to learn academically. So I think the behavioral and the academic screening work together to be effective for students' success. So I think the bottom line here is if we ensure student well-being, then we enable student success.
As a parent myself, again, I put 3 kids through the school district.
those are the decisions we have to make as a school district and on the board. We have to listen to everybody's needs. We have to listen to what the teachers need, what the students need in the classroom, but balance that as well with proper taxation in our community to serve everybody in the right way. We have to consider the tax base we live in. We do not have a heavily commercial tax base. So fortunately or unfortunately, I don't love the term veteran community, but it does fall on the members of our community, our parents, our senior citizens, everybody, even people that don't have children in our schools. And the percentage of people who do not have children in our schools is much greater than the percentage of people who do have children in our schools. So that's when we look at the purpose of public school as a community effort. What are we willing to put in? And we hit some tough times. We had a lot of moving parts with taxes and things like that. There's an Act 1 index that is out every year, and it is affected by, general financial climate, I guess you would say, in the area. And we take that Act 1 index and we can tax up to it or below it, and we carefully consider reports from our business manager and absolutely have eyes on everything that we want to spend, our budget.
Thanks, Margie. Actually, you did a very nice job of explaining how a lot of this is handled within the district, so I really appreciate that. As far as balancing the fiscal need, right, to make sure that we're not adding additional burden, when something needs to be done within the district and there's funds that need to be spent, my first question is going to be the impact on our students. I want to make sure that they're our priority. That's why I'm here on the school board, is to be taking care of and thinking about our students. And then we're also going to weigh that, right? What is the benefit to our students, and then let's see what the cost might be to the taxpayers. I do have a background in business, and so I do try to approach things, efficiently with accountability. I'm not looking to increase anything over and above what's needed. Again, that Act 1 index is there for a purpose. I am part of the facilities committee, and so we think about things like our buildings. We've been talking a lot about the infrastructure that we have within the district and the need to make sure that we don't get into situations where something has been deteriorating for so many years. We haven't touched that infrastructure. So we are working to create a cycle for how things are managed as far as facilities are going, so that we can budget and make things a little bit more.
I really agree with what Mindy was saying about putting students at the center of budget decisions. Although, like Margie said, there are a lot of constituents, a lot of taxpayers who do not have children in the school district, so we need to be mindful to try to be conservative and be sensible in our decision making. And we also need to hold the district accountable for their policy decisions to make sure that they're vetting the right vendors and they're making, good choices as far as curriculum materials and building updates. So I think it's really important that the board is involved with those decisions, that they are transparent to the taxpayers. Board meetings are open to the public, recordings are online for taxpayers. And I'll do my best to try to be sensible and make the right decisions for students to have safe buildings and rigorous education and
I'll touch on the transparency part of the question. I just want everybody to know that we do go over the budget quite often in public meetings, and they are, all budgets are a matter of public record, and you can, as Erin said, find them online. And we, as a board, we get a lot of education on the budget and how we are spending this money, what should it go to, what does it go to, which is really helpful for me to make decisions about what that money is going to go towards. So Now, we also have programs for, people who are below a certain economic level. And, that's above and beyond the Farmstead or Homestead Act, that you can also get money off of your taxes. So people who are struggling, actually can get that extra, with that extra help. So as far as when we ask the teachers, okay, what do you really need in the classroom, and put that in your budget. We know you have wants, but we might not always be able to afford those things. So we're always going for the needs, and for the student needs, we go for the extras. And can you use those chairs, another year?
So I worked in academic medical centers and even a little bit in for-profit medical companies as well, where ROI is a key value to us. Again, when you're in a nonprofit, every dollar is sacred, much like a school district, then too, every dollar should be held accountable. Again, there's a lot of good projects and initiatives, and not to say anybody's gonna bat 1,000, but that mechanism of really, putting forth alternatives, putting forth different budget scenarios, I think there could be a greater level of transparency out there in terms of when tax increases, regardless of what state law allows, the different scenarios that are put forth in terms of, and this is the impact, and this is what we would cut, and this is what we would forego if we kept taxes at this rate versus that rate. The scenario planning, the game planning, again, it's different in for-profit companies that are accountable to shareholders, but I think the taxpayers as the funders and sponsors of all this have the right to know without having it be burdensome as well. Again, I think we could do a better job of being a little bit more transparent on that, take a harder look at some of the ROI, and whether it's either curriculum choices, technology investments, and other solutions. Again, I want to stay away from forward-facing student-teacher ratios then too, but the administrative overhead and other sort of decisions, alternative scenario planning then too. I think the public would benefit from having a deeper level of understanding of this is what the board has considered, and this is why we arrived at this decision, and this is why we're asking different increases.
Thank you. I agree with what Peter just said, that, we have, when it comes to transparency, we do have a budget and all financial related documents on Board Doc, but then it may not be very user-friendly. It seems too serious, too tedious, running into multiple pages, and that's why 3 years ago we started presenting, cutting clips of the budget and presenting and those on YouTube. And I think now with the AI tools that we have, like Visualize, Grok, OpenAI, we should have a format where we're able to load it in one of these options and consume it the way it makes sense to us. Because what makes sense to a financial advisor may not make sense to a 11th grader or like a teacher, so I feel like we need to present it and be able to consume it in a way which is most convenient to us. And I have to say that, contrary to popular belief, the DASD does run a very tight ship. I have almost 4 years of experience, and I realized that they are pretty careful. Like they do justify any expense, and when you ask questions, they're more than happy to answer. And if we tell them to reprioritize the list and push something, they're amenable. They do listen and discuss, so it's not rigid. Last year, we actually the initial.
I recognize that some of these questions can get a little lengthy, so if you need me to repeat it, just tell me. We're going to start this next question with Mindy and then loop back around. What steps would you take to support teachers and staff so that the district can attract and retain high quality educators? Sure. What steps would you take to support teachers and staff so the district can attract and retain high quality educators?
Sorry, just finish writing.
So I think that's an excellent question, especially when we're thinking, when we look at the current climate of teachers coming into the
behavioral issues and students who are bored and gifted students, and it's like playing whack-a-mole to try to like access, you know, their learning styles. So I think that as a teacher, I really love to develop relationships with my students, and I feel valued, obviously when I have a competitive salary. And I have, you know, collaborative time to plan with my colleagues across the curriculum as well as within my department. I also think that professional development should be meaningful and it should be relevant to, you know, the discipline. And you know, teachers need time for grading and they need time to meet with students. And I love the Lunch and Learn program. My daughter takes advantage of it, or she better be, when she has math problems. I think it's wonderful for kids and teachers to be able to collaborate that way.
So to attract and retain quality teachers, well, we do attempt to stay competitive with surrounding districts, not just with salary, but with benefits, the whole package. We also offer opportunities for advancement in education, which will lead to better pay and better position, possibly, if that's what they're going for. We're always recruiting. And like Mindy said, we are always finding great teachers and oftentimes have so many people looking for one position that, you know, can be difficult for, I don't personally, you know, interview these teachers, but it can be difficult for people to choose between these great candidates. So we're doing something right in that way, and I think it's because it's not just the competitive pay and benefits. I think we are a really nice place to work for. I think we're a really good community here at Downtown. And I do think that we give teachers some autonomy in the classroom. It is difficult because teachers are strapped for time. They have to teach a certain amount of a subject in this small amount of time. So they're not always allowed to just, you know, go off on a tangent and say, oh, we're interested in this and let's spend a week doing this. But we do like to make sure that they have the ability to at least make their classroom their own. And also professional development, Erin, you mentioned that, and I think that is really important because in the past we've had teachers say,
So I'll talk about the elephant in the room, the teacher contract. So as we sit here today, the teacher contract expired August 31st, but teachers of Downtown School District have worked without a contract for the last 2 months. Now I understand there's a preliminary
and they are held for a long time. I could probably say a couple of teachers' meetings in this room, and the students would say, yeah, I have been, Mr. So-and-so. I said, a teacher tonight, I have been. My 28-year-old son had been too. So I think, I understand that we need retention, and it was mentioned that we do look at comparable districts, not just every surrounding district, comparable districts, because Downingtown is special, it's stellar. We have over 13,000 students in our schools. It is a huge district to put arms around. We need a lot of help. I'm not saying our teachers aren't loved, aren't appreciated, aren't thought of every day. And we've agonized over the contract. It was not easy. It still isn't. But we love our teachers, and we want them to know that they are welcome, and we welcome new, fresh talent as well. So with that being said, I do think we retain excellent teachers. I do think we have a great staff.
We're going to start with Karen. Please feel free to tell me to repeat this question. Ever since COVID, we have seen pressure put on elected officials to vote on policies because of public opinion. Knowing that you are elected by voters and have an obligation to meet the needs of students and community members, how will you manage the sometimes opposing interests when voting for policies?
Wow, okay, let me take a minute to think about this. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Research. Ever since COVID, we've seen pressure put on elected officials to vote on policies because of public opinion. Knowing that you are elected by voters and have an obligation to meet the needs of students and community members, question, how will you manage the sometimes opposing interests when voting for policies?
Well, full disclosure, I am a people pleaser, so I think it will be very difficult for me to hear a bunch of different opinions and be neutral. And I am a deep thinker, and I will spend time thinking about all the various components of the issue. I do a lot of reflective listening and active listening to try to understand really what the deep root of the issue is. And I think that it's really important for board members to have a dialogue with the community, with administrators, with teachers, with students, in the form of, surveys, anonymous surveys about school climate, community forums, listening sessions, town hall meetings. I think that communication is really important, and transparency. And, everybody has bias, but I think it's important to be kind of open and flexible and curious about, the process, and really try to represent not only the school district, but also my constituents. So I will try to, do that dance, and hopefully be guided by a wonderful support staff in the process of learning how to do that. So yeah, those are my thoughts tonight, and it's an ongoing process to try to, accommodate everybody's needs and try to be a voice for as many people as I can.
I agree with Erin about the listening and the consensus, not just of constituents, but of the board. So the constituents say, okay, if you want something, and the board hears this, and the board is the voice of the constituents. But the facts of policy is that it often takes a long time to change. Oftentimes it is not just up to the board to change it, it comes down from the state. And so sometimes policy is just policy, and it is not changeable as quickly as public opinion can be changeable. So if something remains, an issue remains, obviously that's something that we want to continue to look at and actually make a policy change, because you don't want to make policy changes really quickly, because they're there, the reason that they're there is wanted to use as an example, I wanted to use an example, but I can see that I only have 15 seconds left, but I agree that we want to listen to what people have to say, but we also want to make sure that we have things in place that work for everybody and not just small amounts of people that might be speaking loudly about certain subjects.
I'll throw some of that sentiment and augment it with my own professional experience. Again, I've been in healthcare IT for most of my career. Again, in technology, I've always supported people who were at the bleeding edge. As soon as technology came out, they wanted to try it, put it in somewhere, and I had to figure out how to make that happen. And then 80% of the population was happy with what we were able to offer, and then 10% were the stalwarts running things well past useful life and those kind of things as well. I think education and what we're sort of encouraged to do here and the mission into doesn't react well to immense immediate change. I think there might be, again, catastrophic events, whether it's disease, war, or whatever, that would necessitate, immediate change and a philosophy shift into, but, reacting, to every little ebb and flow, what comes out of social media, or what's even, made up in AI or anything like that, and to put you in an unwinnable position where you're constantly changing course and losing track of what your mission is and your strategy is. I think it's perfectly acceptable to listen and evaluate and possibly prototype and pilot, much like I've done throughout my career, not only in healthcare, but I've also worked in private education, to try to see if something has evolved to the point where we should look at possibly pivoting based on what's going on. But I think very rarely in this space, short of major world events, and should something have to be an immediate reaction.
Thank you. So I got into the board for my first term in December of 2021, and I was a part of the CCIU board as well. I represented Darlington School District at CCIU. And as part of that role, I toured the Portsville campus, and they predominantly serve students with special needs. So when COVID hit, it affected them badly, because, and it was, I think, a huge disservice because we weren't allowing kids to come to campus, and that was the only like a school and an outlet for these children and the families, and it had a lot of negative impact. So if I'm under pressure, I would basically see how the policy affects students first and then teachers, and basically just use those two parameters to see how it's going to, how the policy change is going to affect them. And because that's my focus audience, I understand I represent the taxpayers, but then the ultimate people affected by the policy are the students and the teachers. So I would focus on that demographic and see how it's going to affect them, and keeping that in mind is how I would vote.
So when, you're an elected official and the public elects you, so you are there to serve and listen to the public. When people come out and they're passionate, it's because they're passionate. They feel very deeply about education, current events, social media, whatever might be going on, bullying. Bullying is constantly being brought up. So you have to allow the people that time and space and respect to look at them, listen to them, take in what they are saying, because they are as important as every other person in that room. So you need to listen to your public, you rely on the policy that you know and you follow, and then you use your governance to make the best decision. As Madhu said, students first, our teachers, our district, what's best for our children. And at the end of the day, you can ask anybody in this room, anyone on the panel, who comes first when you make a decision in a school district setting, as a school board member, student first, every time. And then from there, you can answer the constituent, the concerned person, the person that hammered out that email a little too fast and hit that send button. If they come in, but you have to allow yourself a moment to take that in. That person came from a certain space, they're upset. Let me try to meet with them, work with them, answer them in the best way possible. Not discredit them, not say they're not as important, that opinion is not as someone else's.
So all the parents have said some great things, and I just want to make it
the way that it's done. It's just the way that it's done. And I noticed that in my own life, you know, a lot of things that I do are on my computer. Sure, I write things down, and sure, I read a book, but a lot of times it's technology. And I was talking to somebody recently, and they said, you know, there's a lot of technology, I'm worried about cell phones, but when I go to hire somebody, they need to know, they need to be on the cutting edge of technology. And we're also talking about cell phones. You know, what we're talking about, we were talking in the class, student life, cell phone usage and how students use their cell phones almost as we, you know, or younger people would use their computers. And so I think that technology continues to evolve. So obviously we need to evolve with it. I think that if there are students that learn better with a book, and we always have, you know, a textbook for students, then we will provide that. But I noticed with my own kids, I have 2 kids in this room. I don't think that I've seen an actual textbook the whole time. I've seen novels come home to Animal Farm or whatever, but and I know they cut off, but I just think that I think it's appropriate. The way we're using it is appropriate, and it's
So again, I think the research is finally starting to come out now with this generation in terms of being indoctrinated in technology as opposed to, frankly, our generation, as you said here, where we got introduced with it. So we had both a combination of old school, didn't have computers, started getting computers, got the first cell phones, internet, and those kind of things versus it's immersion. And I think now you're finding the research of the pendulum swung too far, and we gave everybody laptops and tablets, didn't teach them how to type or anything like that, and threw it at them and said, just because we spent the money, they're going to get it, and they're going to bounce it. And now we're realizing, well, I don't make eye contact in conversations, and I don't pick up on social cues, and I can't focus for more than an hour because the Snapchat's going off, and all these other things then too. So I think there needs to be a real re-indoctrination of technology can augment, it's immensely powerful. But I also think that, you know, using your imagination, being creative, reading a physical book, drawing with a physical pencil, molding with actual clay, and doing 3D models, I think we need to get back to some of that because we're losing some of that very rapidly now too. And if we want to make people well-rounded for the long haul, I think they need to be taught very early that it's not just technology for technology's sake, and they'll get after that and that. And so absolutely teach them how to, you know, vet websites and how to responsibly use technology, but also put it away.
So there's 2 aspects of this. There's the smartphones, which is being bought by parents or guardians. The school's not providing smartphones to anybody, so we don't control that aspect of it. That's between whoever's buying the device for the child, you know. Coming to technology at school, we have to move with the world. All of us now are using
nice tool to have. I'm not gonna lie, when you're trying to create something or make a meaningful lesson for your students. I love AI. And I like all the bells and whistles that go with different technology, but proper, responsible use. And I want them to be critical, and I want them to be reflective, and I want them to say, you know what, I'm a little too smart to use this one, I'm gonna write this one myself. And I'm gonna share with Mrs. Miller what I came up with, and we're gonna work together to make it a really good product. So I can have that, you know, as a keepsake, as a grade. So I want them to be good
And that Mindy's not going away, it's not going away, and teachers are afraid of it, you know, kids are like, let's go. So, I'm not gonna keep going on with that one. I think that, cell phones, and we're talking about policy, I think that a lot of people have probably heard that the state is, talking about making a statewide cell phone ban in schools. I think that this is something that will be an immediate challenge with, by immediate, I mean, in the next few years. It could just be nothing, to be, no, they're not gonna do that, and then we're off the hook, we don't have to think about it. But if they do make a policy like that, we are beholden to abide. But just like I said, sometimes there's nothing you can do about that policy, the state says you have to do it. So oftentimes what they do is an unfunded mandate, they say you must do it, but we're not gonna pay for it. And that would be very expensive if they're wanting pouches or whatever. But I think that what we really need to do is teach kids how to use cell phones respectfully and responsibly. And I think that for the state to mandate something that they don't go every single school, every single student, I think that that will really be a challenge for us as a district.
Let's start back at the top of the deck. What is your position on school start times and how do you propose to implement it?
Okay, so 4 years ago when I ran for the first time, this was one of my agendas. I believe in later school start time. I really think that 7:40 to 7:20, 7:40 was very early. Ideally for high schoolers, I would want schools to start at 8:30. But I'm very happy that given the limitations that we have, that we've been able to push it to 8 o'clock. Because I'm also a part of, a school study group. And I have been for almost 5 years now, where it's a national chapter, other school districts go for the later school start time. So, but we have a limitation where we don't have lights at these fields. So in winter, it's very difficult to go late, and so that's one of the main reasons we're not able to move to 8:30. And also, I feel like some of these changes, we need to make it at the county level. It's not enough if we just make it as, we don't have an island, because, our school schedule and our after-school activities affect our neighboring school districts when it comes to practice and games and stuff. So there are some decisions which need to be made at the county level, and I hope we continue these conversations along with infrastructure improvements such as lights to see if we can flip it somewhere where the high school start at 8:30 and elementary start at 8 o'clock, and then we all end in decent time, which is like before 3:30 hopefully.
So when my oldest started at East, the start time was 7:20 a.m. And he loved it because he was done early. But then came my other two, who I would have done anything for their start time. So eventually it had gone to 7:40, and that's where I ended my regime with telling East my kids were going to 7:40. Oh my gosh. And then as soon as later start time started being the buzz, 4 years ago during COVID, we were all talking about it. We knew that it was time. So we were fortunate to have Dr. O'Donnell, who is up to any conversation, willingly listens, will visit everything we have concern about. And we had some really good healthy conversations about school start times. And we had a lot of constituents come to meetings and speak about school start times, sleep hygiene, and being a teenager, and that growth process, and the sleep that you have to have. So we considered it heavily, and as Madhu mentioned, the flip. We had talked about a later start time. High school starts here, elementary starts here, and then we eventually flip them so that the elementary will start earlier and the high school will start a little bit later. But we haven't quite got there yet because of schedules, older students putting younger students on the bus, things like that, with responsibilities at home. So you see, when we wrap our arms around something, it took us this long to get a later start time, and we dug in there, and Dr. O'Donnell dug in with us. He was great. But you have to understand that that is a huge, like Madhu said, we don't live on an island. Like
constituents, hearing from teachers, hearing from administrators and students, as to what their needs are, and doing our best to try to come up with a solution that's best for the majority, is what we do. Thanks.
I think maybe everything has been said, like a lot of what I wanted to say, I should say, has been said on this. What you said about like getting an education, if you kind of know as a parent about this, but so we learned so much on the board about food hygiene and the science behind sleep and why a later start time would be better. I agree with Madhu, and probably with a lot of people that the high schoolers should be going later than the elementary schoolers, but we cannot allow the when we're talking majority here, I understand that there are some late risers, and we understand them. But we can't like let perfect be the enemy of progress, which is we went through a lot of different iterations and changes and said, okay, this is what we can do right now, and that's where the compromise came in on the board. We did a lot of compromising and a lot of thinking about it, and like you said, I don't think we're done. And like Marcia said, I don't think we're done with this process, and I would like to see the teenagers going a little bit later. Also, there is a later level for some students. They can choose that if their schedule allows for that. I know that my son, he goes in second period. So I know not everybody's schedule is going to allow for that. Some people are enrolled. It depends just on the players that we have, and someone who that need to be there, but with everything happens.
Again, as several other candidates said, I'm still living that experience too. I'm up at 6 o'clock in the morning, get my seventh grader on the bus versus my senior at West can take his time, and he's grateful. Frankly, my college sophomore is a little ticked that his brother gets to go in much later, and we'll get tardy, leaving the house at 7:30, where my son was dead to rights. He was going to be sitting on the Avenue traffic, and there was no way he was getting there to let the house at 7:25, 7:30, without the grace of God and somebody letting you in. So, I think, again, from a practical standpoint then too, I know there's a lot of logistics at play. I hate the fact that we have to base it based on busing availability or field lights, that it can truly be about the academics and the kids and what works better for them, and then communicate well in advance to the parents to say, these are the things we're going to try to do and we're going to commit to doing it. Again, I lived through the half-day kindergarten, pick up your 12:30 or your delayed start, and you got an afternoon kindergarten. You had to find somebody. I hired the nannies. Again, grateful that we have Westchester and a lot of college age students then who are looking for help get the kids off the bus, get started on homework, give them a snack, and that kind of stuff into I truly have that perspective then too. So again, I'm grateful that the district was able to make that accommodation. Selfishly, I wish it would have happened a little earlier, but again, I think any extra time that you can do is good. Thank you.
Start with Margie for the next one. What measures have been and will be taken to improve the academic performances of all students?
So we rely on our testing, have to, over the broad stroke of our students to read and think about what the needs are, planning, and what we can do for future. So we look at the PSSAs, we look at the keystones, mostly the PSSAs. And we started a new test, and we used to do AIMS, which were just kind of figuring out what the students' needs were and where to start for teaching purposes. And you get a new iReady diagnostic tool, which I think is great. But when you're planning for student success, the question was about testing again?
What measures have been and will be taken to improve the academic performances of all students?
Okay, thank you. So when we consider that performance, we use the diagnostic tool specifically to meet the child where they are, and then we also use our general testing tool to see where we've come and where we still need to hit. So you have to kind of rely on student feedback, parental feedback. The whole year becomes really a conversation. we are never not talking about student achievement and student growth and student results. That is always top of mind, every meeting we have, whether it's executive session, whether it's our general meeting, the committee of the whole. We always inevitably speak of, where are the students? How do they look? What do you think this is going to look like? We just started this brand new curriculum cycle. We revisit the curriculum every 6 years and start a new cycle. How's that working for the teachers? Do we have a conversation? Thank you.
So, a couple of things. The first being, most of us were actually honored to be able to choose and to, locate and choose our superintendent, Dr. Dom. He has been one of the aces in getting all of this in line for us, I think, in the district. He was a math teacher. He has this background in math. He's been able to kind of look at some things and reevaluate and put us back in line as far as some of our math curriculum goes. Another item that we've worked on has been our strategic plan. And our strategic plan has 5 goals tied to it. One goal is entirely around academics and bringing those academic numbers. We set goals for Dr. Donald that tie into those measures specifically each year. He's implemented all kinds of different programs. One that I know my son is in, which is a Math X program. It's an additional math in middle school that allows students that might be struggling to have some additional time to work on their where they might be weaker. So these are just small pieces of ways we are working to improve academic performance, and this measures are specifically laid out within our strategic plan. And if you haven't seen it, check it out on the website. It's quite impressive.
When I think about academic performance, I generally think about test scores and standardized tests like the PSSAs and Keystones. But I think that it's also important for students to be identified as, needing extra support, whether they have, learning differences or giftedness. I think it's important for students, teachers to be constantly curious and aware of students' learning differences, and that's a really important part of helping them be academically proficient. I think it's also important to, as I said earlier, to have a variety of different opportunities for students to learn about different careers, to develop friendships, hobbies, all those kinds of interpersonal components of school that help them be ready for school and excited to be there. I think so much of it is having intrinsic love of learning and having relationships with their teachers and and their friends and wanting to be in the environment. So I think it's really important that all students get differentiated instruction and that teachers are providing a variety of different means of I think the iReady and Ames Web are good indicators of how students will do on those standardized tests. I think
I think this is very much like question number 1. So I'm going to go back to the screening and like Marcia was talking about, is that we have to know where students are at, and another app, so we can build on that. That's very important. I think, and this may be an unpopular
they don't, then you basically get told a bill of goods and then you pivot to the next thing. And unfortunately, you don't retrain all the kids who were subjected to learning that and then go back and revisit them and say, sorry, we didn't get this. Again, I echo the sentiment that you have to start working with the kids early on to figure out what their strengths and weaknesses are, give them the additional support. It's not just enough to say, if you didn't do well in the PSA, you should take it again. Again, I've experienced that with my own child. I'm not sure
school, they're gonna flourish and they're gonna make friendships and do well in school and just have an overall sense of well-being and belonging. So I think that's the goal. Thanks.
So we do offer, variety of programs, clubs, electives, and as Mindy was talking about with the strategic plan, we were learning a lot about studies that were saying that young people who are
It is indeed a mental.
We're down to our last question. We're gonna start with Mindy. Before we give you the microphone. Erin, sorry.
Not that I'm not.
Before we get final thoughts from everybody, we're gonna do our last question, and then we'll we'll just keep going with the end. Your final thoughts, what you want to before we do our vote, okay? So last question, how will you measure whether the school board and district leadership are successfully serving students, staff, and the community?
Can you say that one?
Sure. How will you measure whether the school board and district leadership are successfully serving the students, staff, and the community?
I'm sorry, one more time. How will I measure?
How will you measure whether the school board and district leadership are successfully serving students, staff, and the community?
Well, I think that it's really important, as I said earlier in the evening, to solicit the opinions and, the viewpoints of, the district and parents and students and staff. I just was looking at the website, the climate survey that was just, I just got a notice that there was another climate survey that was coming out. And so I was looking back, in the 2024 one and looking at the areas of growth that were identified. In the middle school, I think it was, across the board, the lowest category was, school boredom. And I think in the high school it was, I can't remember, I think it may have been, social, emotional learning and, oh, here we go, yeah. So I think that it's important to have those kinds of surveys, to get that feedback, as far as like how teachers feel, welcome in the district, what the opinions of the students are about their experiences in the school. And really take that data and, things are, new policies are in place. If students feel like they're being bullied, I love Lineville Elementary has a buddy bench, where kids can go if they want to have a buddy. And I think it's wonderful to have those kind of, opportunities for kids.
I think that, I think the community lets you know if you're not doing a good job. My inbox will let me know if something's happening in the district, and people feel like we're not doing a great job. I knock on doors at this time of year, people let me know, and one of the things I say is, do you have any questions or concerns about the school district? And people will let me know, and I always take these into consideration, but so to measure it, I think it is hard to measure something like that, like you talked about earlier, like measuring achievement. Because, do you measure the district against its scores? Do you measure the district against a survey? I think the surveys are actually great. People always tell me, don't do the survey, nobody answers the survey. But I really, think that we do get a lot of good information from the surveys. If people think about it, when you have something that you need to say, and you get a survey, you're probably going to take the survey, right? Because you want somebody to know about you. If somebody wants to know what I think, well, I kind of want to know, and then I'll tell somebody what I think about this. So I think the surveys are good. We also elicit feedback, from our community. We say, come to our meetings and talk to us about, what's bothering you. And I think that the success of a district really is the proof is in the pudding, sort of good thing.
So again, I think surveys are a tool. Again, you can have survey bias in terms of who feels so passionate to fill out a survey. You need some metrics in order to sort of take the pulse of how things are going. I also think, again, recognizing fully that board members are volunteers and we can't just monopolize their time. Even the format of a board meeting, where even if you do show up in person to ask a question for 2 minutes and then everybody just sort of stares at you, and we need to have a better community sort of engagement and discussions, not around hot topic
conducting surveys and asking community questions and sending out things, it was all electronic, and we were missing a whole contingency, our senior citizens, who are such a huge, beautiful part of our community. So the district literally went back to paper and mailboxes. We had to. You know, I think we want to go so far and get so, you know, advanced with technology, but at the end of the day, you have to take and look at your community. What is my community made up of? Is it all just people online? No. You know? I mean, my own mom doesn't even have a flip phone. So, I do think knowing your community is key. Putting the students first, knowing the members of your community, visiting, talking to people, and having town halls. And, you know, Dr. O'Donnell used to have coffee with the superintendent in State College, where he was superintendent, and in his district.
I think that's important. I appreciate what you both said. I do think that it would be nice to spend some time with the community. Also, please understand that the nine of us, not all of us up here, but the nine of us do have mailboxes. So where you know, if you have something that you want to discuss, please feel free to send that email. We're happy to talk to you. That's what we're here for. Yes, it is a voluntary position. There's no need for these jobs, but we do want to hear from you. What I also wanted to say, yes, there is, you know, we measure on the growth within our test scores, and we're measuring on our climate surveys and our progress on the strategic plan. But apart from all of that, success is in our people. Success is in our students, right? How happy they are to come into school each day. Success comes from our teachers who stay within the district, our families that come to programs and are, you know, excited about what's happening within our schools. The success comes from the people that are here. And we appreciate that. We want to make sure that our students are supported, our staff is valued, and that the community feels that we trust them and that
Thank you.
You know, it's an honor and a privilege to serve such a great district who has been so good to my children. And, you know, my husband and I have lived in the district for 30 plus years, so certainly we love it and it's home to us. I want to thank everybody here for your interest. I think it's crucial that we get more young people interested in voting and civics. It's not rocket science. I talk about it with, when I talk to full-day kindergarten, I talk about it with kindergartners, you know, making a decision, listening to things, because voting, they want to choose what do we want to play, what do we want to see. So it even starts as rudimentary as that, but I think it's it's a good conversation to have and talk about interest in your community, because like Jacob said, these decisions, these votes in November directly affect you as a taxpayer and as a homeowner.
So I want to thank everybody, and thank you, Jacob, thank you to BCBF, and WCP, and AHA, and all of you. But I also want to take a second to brag. You guys, you've done some amazing things as a school board. I'm running for re-election because I want to continue to do some of the great work that we've done. We've implemented full-day kindergarten this year. We've been able to add later school start times. We've implemented lunch and learn. We have put additions onto 4 buildings